Imagine you're a cop investigating a guy named Rick Carver, a real estate broker with the empathy of a cactus. He was the last person to see Mr. Caldwell before the man decided that the only thing worse than being evicted was being evicted from existence. And Rick tells the police all of this with the same enthusiasm as someone explaining how to use a microwave. But it all makes sense when you realize that he makes a living kicking people out of their homes. Now, meet Dennis Nash, an ordinary guy, a construction worker, and a single father who's about to learn that the American dream comes with insane interest rates. He owes the bank $80,000 and is desperately trying to keep a roof over his son's head. He even tries to negotiate in court, but the response he gets is basically, "Congratulations, you have 30 days to get screwed." But Rick and the sheriffs don't care. They show up at Dennis's house like an eviction SWAT team. Dennis tries to argue, but Rick has a piece of paper signed by a judge that basically says, "Move your couch out now." After an emotionally devastating resistance, Dennis and his family end up in a cheap motel. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. It really helps me out and lets me create more content for you guys. Now back to the story. Desperate, Dennis goes out looking for any job he can find. He even gets into a fight with a guy over stolen tools because why not add some UFC to his misery? Amidst all this chaos, Rick shows up and casually offers him $50 for a nasty job. Dennis takes it but smartly negotiates for more when he realizes that no one wants to clean up a house flooded with sewage. After proving he has the stomach for dirty work, literally, he ends up at Rick's mansion fixing an air conditioner. And that's when the suspicious job offer comes. "Get in the car, Dennis. I'll show you how to make real money. What could possibly go wrong?" Pretty soon, Dennis is working for Rick and his soulless eviction company. He starts doing everything, stripping houses, cutting illegal power lines, throwing people out, and even helping Rick scam the system to get more government money. In one particularly cruel moment, he shuts off the water and electricity for a guy named Frank Green, who, by the way, is the father of one of his son's classmates. Nothing like turning a parent-teacher meeting into an awkward encounter. And speaking of awkward, Dennis gets a check for over $7,000, but instead of celebrating, he asks Rick to help him buy back his home. Rick agrees, but on one condition: Dennis will owe him a favor later. That favor comes quickly. Rick wants Dennis to handle the eviction of Mr. and Mrs. Tanner. And what does our hero do? He does exactly that, because apparently empathy has a price and Rick pays well. The elderly couple begs, cries, and curses, but Dennis follows the eviction playbook without a hitch. You can see that it bothers him, though, which is progress considering he started this job stealing air conditioners. In the end, like a tragic magic trick, he moves his family back into their old home without saying a word. Now, here's a fun fact for you. Andrew Garfield, who plays Dennis, got so deep into the story that he visited real eviction victims to understand their pain. Imagine being kicked out of your home and suddenly Spider-Man shows up to ask how you're feeling. Speaking of questionable decisions, if I were in Dennis's shoes, I never would have worked with Rick without at least asking, exactly what am I going to be doing? But if I had no other choice, maybe I would have tried to help the people being evicted instead of just taking the money and pretending everything was fine. Connor and Lynn are in shock. Dennis drops the bombshell. They're moving back home in a few weeks. Connor, as excited as a kid at Disney World, runs to his old room, while Dennis's mom gives him that, "How the hell did you pull this off?" Look, Dennis, all confident, explains that his employer bought the house for him, and he's paying it off in small installments. Sounds great, right? Yeah, not really. The guy is kicking people out left and right, and it's starting to mess with his head. He even has a nervous breakdown after evicting an elderly couple without knowing the real reason they were being kicked out. But of course, to Rick, his boss, Dennis is doing great. So great that a big-shot investor named Mr. Freeman wants him and Rick to manage 1,000 houses. The catch? Freeman wants them to keep an eye on a guy named Ortiz, a real estate agent, because something seems fishy. Dennis takes on the mission and discovers that Ortiz already sold 15 homes to a bigger investment group. And his brilliant solution? Stealing all the appliances from the sold houses to destroy Ortiz's credibility. After a day like that, what's better than a kid's birthday party at a motel? Dennis is there, trying to enjoy himself, when one of the evicted guys recognizes him. A fight breaks out, and in the chaos, Connor sees everything. The kid finally realizes that his dad isn't exactly a hero. But Dennis can't quit. He decides to keep evicting people until he fully owns his home. And then, plot twist, Ortiz gets screwed over because of the missing appliances, and Rick, like the ultimate business shark, offers to cover the losses in exchange for full control of the deal. Kahana, the buyer, likes the offer and seals the deal. Rick is so happy that he throws a party at his house, because nothing screams success like a pool full of people who have probably evicted a dozen families themselves. But while Rick and Dennis celebrate by the pool, Dennis can't stop thinking about his house. He just wants his family, his peace. But Rick says it's going to take a little longer. So, Dennis decides to buy a brand new mansion for them instead. And guess what? Lynn and Connor hate it. They can't ignore that the house was built on other people's suffering. Lynn decides to move in with her brother in Tampa, and Connor goes with her. Dennis is shocked. The next day, Rick hands Dennis a forged document to screw over Frank Green, the guy still fighting to keep his house. The order is clear. If Frank wins in court, Rick loses his big deal. Dennis has to act. But when he arrives at the courtroom and sees the hope in the Green family's eyes, he hesitates. But Rick pulls the leash tighter, and Dennis hands over the forged document. Frank loses his home. And when Dennis returns, he finds out his own family has left him. Karma is real and it works fast. Completely broken, Dennis gets drunk and sleeps on his porch. But his hangover barely wears off before it's time for Frank's eviction. When they get there, the police are already on the scene. Frank is armed and furious, accusing the system of screwing him over, which, let's be real, it did. While the police try to de-escalate, Dennis steps forward and confesses. He was the one who faked the documents. Frank surrenders, his family is saved, and Dennis finally does something right. But now, of course, the police want a word with both him and Rick. Rick, furious, still tries to compliment Dennis before their interrogation, but you can feel that he wants to kill him. Not literally. Probably. And as Dennis cries in the back of the police car, he finally feels the full weight of everything he's done. But what really stands out is the look on Frank's son's face. He stares at Dennis with something that almost looks like gratitude. For the first time, someone Dennis evicted didn't end up unfairly thrown onto the street. Now, here's the question for you guys. If you were in Dennis's shoes, at what point would you have quit? Or would the dream of owning a home justify everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for your support. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.